Welcome everybody to our second installment of Food for Thought with Karabo and Konsi. Today, our guest, oh my goodness, if you are in the agricultural industry, she needs no introduction. We are sitting with the one and only Dr. Langelihle Simela, an academic, a researcher, a business enabler, a woman who sits on many boards and directorships on South Africa's agricultural industry bodies. Dr. Langa, welcome.
Thank you, Konsi, and thank you for that introduction.
Langa, I don't even know where to begin, but can I take you way back to the days when you're just a little kid in Zim and how you came about to love agriculture so much?
Yeah, so I grew up in rural areas in Zimbabwe, and agriculture was really our mainstay. We grew our crops, we had our cattle, we milked the cows, and we participated in that. It was a daily life, a way of life. And you know, one thing that really struck me is that towards the end of the War of Independence, all schools and every services were closed in the communal areas, including our communal area. And so my two parents were teachers. There were obviously no work for them. But you know what carried us through that? It was agricultural production. We ate pumpkins, we ate squash, we ate everything from the field. At some point, I actually really hated the taste of everything that came from the field. But that got us through more than a year and a half, or probably close to 2 years, when my parents were not employed. So I think that value of agriculture struck me. And the second point was the two cute little good-looking houses in the community belonged to the two extension officers. I actually don't remember seeing those extension officers, but I do remember driving past these two little cottages and how neat they were. And I do remember that every time we worked in the fields, our parents were like, "Ooh, Domeni, from Domeni comes," you know. It was like, these guys made a difference. So I think that's where my love for agriculture really was nurtured at that stage.
Okay, so Langa, seeing that agriculture is such a male-dominated industry, how has your experience been, being in this industry?
I must say I've never felt the gender issue in agriculture. I mean, I went into varsity in our class of animal science. We were probably 20 students and 3 ladies. So in all my career in the industry, it's always been male-dominated. And so for that reason, I haven't felt the impact personally. I'll put it that way. But when I look at it and I listen to other women, I really do see the role and importance of affirmative action in agriculture. There's a lot that we can do for women, just looking at the farmers. I actually get frustrated with the narrative that, agriculture is dominated by women, but women don't have opportunities. And I'm saying, I think we always focus on the wrong things. There are a lot of women that are doing very well in the agricultural sector, as farmers, as technocrats in the industry, as researchers in the industry. Let's focus on those women and say, how did you get there? How do we open up space for other people to get there? I always feel that if you focus on the negative side, you're actually closing the doors. Because if I say to you, agriculture is male-dominated, women don't have too many opportunities, are you even going to consider going into it? But if I say to you, here are women doing things in agriculture, making a difference in agriculture, then you inspire younger women to come into the sector.
Yeah, that's actually a motivating story, because what we often hear is that, especially as we young women also get to have kids, it's a long drive to be out there to the farm, who are you going to leave your kids with, this and that. So it's nice to sort of overlook, all of these other things and just focus on what is it that is your purpose and making the difference actually in the sector.
And Langa, I really like your perspective. It actually touches on, like I said in the intro, that you have served on many boards, or actually are serving on many boards. And at some point you're the CEO of NERPU, you're the vice chair at Agbiz. And just being that person sitting at that table, obviously with you have to bring more to the table, but how do you get to that place? Like, let's say a young Konsi one day, aims to be a vice chairperson of Agbiz. Like, how did you end up being in those positions?
I think really what opens up the opportunities is a passion for what you do and doing it well. I'm really passionate about agriculture. I'm particularly passionate about agricultural development. So I just wake up and do what I'm doing and try and strive to do it as well as possible. So I've never actually sat down and said, I want to be on this board and I want to be on the other board. It was really me just doing what I do and doing it as best as I potentially can. each and every moment. And I think that's what opened up opportunities for me. And so that would be my advice to any young person, that please go out there, do the best that you can. In every time you've got an opportunity to do something, do the best do the best that you can. But also, which is probably something that I personally overlooked, do network. Do offer yourself up. Do say, look, I am capable of this. I can do this. I can do that. And I've seen that working for me in some instances without really thinking about it. When I was doing my PhD, for instance, at the University of Pretoria, I got an opportunity to attend a conference where there was a lady from the Food and Agriculture Organization. So, having always read up about the organization and keen to be part of the staff, I sat with her at the table and I told her that, you know what, I've actually always wanted to work for the FAO. And she said, really? We've got this opening, So, yeah. So I think if you don't speak out, this is something that I've really learned much later in life. If you don't speak out and say what you want to do, nobody knows, because only you knows. And really the worst case is somebody saying no.
Yeah.
So.
And I think I saw the power of networking as well. When I was doing my master's, you were able to link me up, having worked with people who are in the livestock industry. You gave me their contacts. And once I reached out and said, Dr. Langa, gave me these numbers, things started happening. And I was able to complete within the time, all because of those networks.
Yes.
So I think it's something that I don't know, we should really try to look into, because I know my networks are not that great. I try as much as possible, but you can always do better.
Yeah, no, that's
okay,
true.
so maybe Langa, talking about passion and purpose and doing what you can within that space that you're in. What is a day in the life of Dr. Langa Simela looks like? You're a mother, you are in the board of all these many industry bodies, you are a mentor, and at some stage, you are a student. I remember you're always studying and trying to get the best that you can from that angle. So what does that look like?
And a therapist, I used to call her crying.
That makes the two of us.
The studying, I would like to start there. For me, if I'm going to work in a field, I feel I need to know the basics. I know people say you can learn on the job, and yes, you can, and I think there's some people open enough to do that. But I like to understand the basics. What informs decisions that are made and how are they made? And then from there, I can operate in that industry. So when being an animal scientist and I moved into the bank with no financial background whatsoever, I did.
A brave move.
I did.
Science, specific, path to a banking industry.
Yeah.
That's such a big change.
So I did decide then to take an MPhil in development finance, and that worked very well for me. So it meant, again, this is what I was talking about, the dedication and putting in the time. Because during that time, I promise you I was sleeping 3-4 hours a night. But I told myself that this course is getting done in these 2 years. And okay, I did it in 2.5 years because I took a bit longer with my research, but I completed it. So that takes the dedication. You do your work, you make sure you manage the family, and you do your studying.
I also remember, when I had my low days, when I was studying, I would call Langa. She knows WhatsApp call, whatever call. And every time I would be like, oh, Langa would be so disappointed in me. Let me do this. And I would push. So you played a very important part.
I'm glad. I actually think you ladies have moved very far as well with your careers. And I'm inspired to hear that you say that I made some contribution. I'm really happy.
No, still are.
So back to the question, what does a day in your life look like?
So lockdown, I think, has really opened up a lot of opportunities for the mother side, because I've always felt that suffers a lot when you're a working woman. So in the morning, okay, my children are fairly mature enough to make it wake up and take care of themselves. I just make sure that there is enough stuff for them to pack for their school lunch. They wake up, make their breakfast, and pack their lunch, and like 5 minutes time, we're leaving.
So they're very independent.
Yes, thank goodness, yeah. And then I drive them to school, and then we come back, and these days is really teams after teams, isn't it?
Yeah, by Zoom calls.
Yes. But
Normal.
What I actually find fascinating, because I used to work in Joburg and they would walk home, but no one walks home now. Mommy is here.
Mommy's around.
You've got to organize your team's meetings and make sure you're doing them on the phone. And it's like, so when they're coming in, it's like, yeah, and they come back and then we work, and then at the end of the day, we make dinner, clean up and stuff like that. So right now, a lot of it is Teams meetings, but with colleagues, with clients, and other industry role players. And in terms of work, what I'm really doing is to find solutions to enhance our lending to the developing sector. And I absolutely enjoy that. I always say that I wish I had gone into that space a bit earlier in my career, because having worked with your developing farmers, what I found is there's so many challenges, so many issues.
There's definitely a gap in knowledge in that area.
Yeah. And then you spend a lot of your time, because you're working so closely with these people, you tend to sympathize and empathize and forget that you actually need them to grow. And sometimes that sympathy and empathy is not helping anyone to grow. And then when you go to the bank, you realize that there's definitely certain criteria you have to meet for you to access lending. And you need that money to grow. So you can't spend too much time sympathizing, empathizing. You also need to nudge and say, move along, do this. Unless you do this, you will not be able to finance credit. So that's what we're doing in the bank, finding solutions, but internal solutions to enable us to finance the developing sector. So if I can talk to those solutions, it's more, a lot of them don't have own security, so we have to find alternative security. In instances where there is inadequate skills, we have to find technical assistance providers to help them along. And obviously, because they're usually new to bank, pricing is high, we have to find a way of subsidizing the interest rates for them. And then the fourth one, which is still a challenge, is banks will ask for a certain percentage of own contribution. That we haven't quite been able to solve for, but I'm hoping that this blended finance scheme from government will come through, and if that comes through, it will really open up a lot of funding for most of these developing farmers that are not able to raise their own contribution.
So if an emerging farmer, like I know when I was still working at the bank, you get a lot of emails, even people on LinkedIn, asking you, I'm looking, I just got land and I want to start farming. I have no idea what to farm and the bank won't give me a loan. Like, how do you help those people? I know you just mentioned those 4 things, but if someone wants to get into the business and they still have time to develop themselves before they get that loan, or, just to prepare themselves, what would you say should they have in order to have their house in order before they actually take that next step?
Find a lot of, in South Africa at least, your commodity associations, your corporates and so on, there's a lot of activity to support the developing farmers. They should tap into those networks and get that assistance so that they know. The better you know, the better for you it is by the time you come to a commercial bank to borrow money. That's one thing I would say. And then secondly, as they use developmental funding, whether it's enterprise development money from another company, grant funding from government, keep your records, because that's a thing that most of our developing farmers don't do. As banks, we depend on historical performance to be able to tell whether or not you're able to do what you're saying you're able to do. And if we cannot prove that historical performance, it's very difficult then for us to say, okay, we can lend you money. And it's difficult from 2 instances. The one being that if we lend and you're not able to pay back, by law, we must claim that money. We must follow all due process to recover that money and either recover it or prove that we can't recover it. But by law, we have to do that. We can't just say, oops, it didn't work and leave it like that. But your development finance institutions can. They can lend to you. And if you are not able to pay back, yes, they will look at it and say what went wrong, but they can not recover, and it's allowable by law. So that's why I'm saying it's very important to develop that track record so that by the time you come to the bank, you're saying, look, I can do this thing, and I have a record to prove that. I'll give you an example. There's one young farmer that really fascinated me. He holds an MBA. I'm not going to name him. But when I first met him, but because he also understood finance, and he was fairly starting off, he used a whole lot of enterprise development money from a whole lot of corporates. He went to people and said, can I have seed? You know, I'm adding value to you as a black client. Will you buy my grain? I'm adding value to you as a black. So he used the existing supporting networks in the industry and got himself a whole lot of funding to start him off. And even when I asked him about a bank, he says, no ways, I'm not ready yet. But that was somebody who could say that because they understood how funding works. So that's why I'm saying that if our developing farmers are starting off, can they at least, with whatever little they have, keep your production record, keep your finance record, show that you are able to do it. That's one side. On the farmer side, I really love to talk on the policy side because I worked so much with the industry and I always like to influence policy as much as possible. We have a lot of development funding in this country, but we're not coordinated. I always say financing is like, it's like school. You have creche for the young ones, you know, primary school, secondary school, tertiary. And banks and commercial lenders are really your tertiary finances. You have all these ones in between to help you start off. But if we don't coordinate that flow and suddenly say everybody should come to varsity for their money, you know, we're setting them up for failure right from the onset. So let's have that development funding coordinated to grow somebody from nursery school, primary, secondary, and then they qualify for, you know, the highest level of lending, which is your commercial finance.
Okay, so given all these steps and tips that you have given, say, I am I would like to go into farming. I am in a rural village down in Rustenburg in Mesquite, say for instance. So, and I don't know more about all these other options that you were talking about. So what message would you say to me? You know, I'm interested in farming, you know, I'd like to do something with myself, I have time, I have the love, you know, what would you say about me? And I don't know all of these other things that you were mentioning.
I would say first find out what is viable in your area. So do your thorough research and find out what has markets, what would fly in the market. Please don't go and put onions and cabbages until they're ready and then you say, who wants to buy them? You know, because that doesn't work mostly in agriculture. So find out what works in your area. What can you produce? Get the knowledge, read, understand, network, talk to people. You know, the greatest advisor to any farmer is the other farmer because they've paid the school fees. They've worked in that area, they understand the environment, they understand the nuances of that environment. So talk to other farmers around you. They would advise you. They would tell you what works in that area, what doesn't work in that area. And then once you've decided, hopefully you have some own capital to put in that because obviously if you're coming up and saying, I'm interested, very few people are just going to lend you money. So you really need to have saved up to start something on whatever scale you are. And start on that and start keeping records. Check your performance, check how you're doing. If you run into problems, understand what caused those problems so that as you go on, you are able to resolve those problems. And one thing I always say, also look into those enterprise development programs. I mean, a lot of corporates want to do that. They want to include black suppliers into the supply chain. But you must also meet certain criteria to be in that supply chain. You can't just pitch up with your box of spinach and say, buy it from me today. So talk to them and understand what they want and also find out if there's any funding that you can let into those enterprise development programs and then participate in that and then just grow from there. But the growth is really and truly through learning. It's reading, networking, talking to your networks and talking to your neighbors as the farmers and talking to your market role players because they also understand the products they want to buy and what quality, what standards, and the input suppliers. They want to sell their products, but they also want to sell their products to somebody that is going to use it, in a productive way so that it also grows their market. So it's networking, reading, and understanding the environment that you work.
What is the one myth, about your profession or this field that we're in that you would like to debunk?
I guess the youth one. I think to me that's another big challenge, pretty similar to the women's story. There's always there's no youth in agriculture. I'm like, have you looked at the young people that are in the sector? What have we done for them? So I feel that we're almost writing them off. We're almost discouraging them. I think, again, as I was saying about women, let's work with those that are there and help them to thrive and show what they can do. I mean, for me, in any career, I think what it takes is passion. If you've got the passion, you're going to go all the way and make sure it happens. You've seen all the passion stories that you see around the world. It's always people being driven against all odds to do something because they like doing it. And I think there are plenty of young people that are interested in agriculture and that are in agriculture. So let's not keep saying that agriculture is not sexy, young people are not there. Let's work with young people in there and grow them. I mean, we say that about youth. On the other end, we're crying about an aging population amongst the farmers. So how are we bridging the gap if we're actually almost saying to young people, there's no opportunity for you here, by saying that they are not there when they are there. So to me, that's the one myth that I think we need to debunk. The youth are there in agriculture, let's help them succeed. And Karabo, please can I have the second one then? The second one is our communal lands and all the land that we have. And this is really South Africa and Africa as a whole. I mean, in South Africa, we sit there, we say we have 3,000 hectares of unutilized land. When you go into the rest of the continent, it runs into millions of hectares of unutilized land. For me, let's start encouraging the use of that land. I always feel that if you can produce on that you have and produce as efficiently as you can, some people will grow, some will grow into farmers, and some of them will migrate out of the sector into other sectors. But let's encourage the utilization of the land that we have.
In the other video that I am agreeing, because in the other video that we recorded, our guest said, learn to grow where you are and start where you are. So I think that's sort of the same sentiment that, is coming through on your side.
To be successful, you need to push yourself. Absolutely. So we have come to the serious part of our conversation, Langa, and we want the guests to know you just outside of your policy liaison and your business development and your enterprise development and you being an Uber driver for your kids now during COVID. And so Karabo, I suppose you can start. So you have some of the questions.
Okay, I'm going to start with a nice one. So Langa, if your family had a fictional television family show, which TV family is most similar to yours?
Now you see, you're asking things that are way out of my scope.
You don't have TV. This is why
The Lion King.
Do you have 1 or 2 PhDs? A master of philosophy in
Distinction. With distinction.
in development finance. Okay, while being a mom to 2 kids.
The only family that my children and I kind of watch these days is family reunion every now and again.
Okay, maybe this one is a bit better. What's in your bucket list? And we know that you've traveled a whole lot, especially also in your profession. We're always envious of you because you'll be 2 weeks in the US, 2 weeks here and there, living it up. So, apart from traveling and all of these things, what is in your bucket list?
It is definitely traveling. I mean, I've really been fortunate that I have been able to travel out of work and out of just the networks that I'm part of. If there's a women's conference somewhere, you kind of try and find sponsorship and end up there. So I've enjoyed that. But I'd like to do it a bit more, especially just South Africa alone. I mean, I've traveled a lot I always say I'm so grateful of how much of this country I know, but it's always been around the cities. I'd like to do some of the outlying areas, places that you wouldn't go for work, and just do that. And secondly, the continent itself. I think we're such a rich, diverse continent, and we just never get to know it and see it and enjoy it, and I would love to do that. So for me, if you say bucket list, I think that's the one thing that I would like to do. And secondly, I think I'm lazy. Much as you say I read a lot, I need to write more.
More like journaling.
Not even journaling, but contributing to knowledge. Like if I look at the developing sector and look at financing the developing sector, we need to write these things a bit more. Because if we don't, whatever I know, whatever I think about it, it's gone. Somebody else, if they come into my space, they have to work it out all over again. And I just find that as a continent, again, we write very little. If you try and Google anything, just out of hobby about anything in our continent, it's very difficult to find it on the internet. But other countries are so good at posting up things about themselves. I always say, my one fascination was visiting a town of Verona in Italy. So they've got a statue of Juliet there. I don't know whether Romeo and Juliet were real, but they do have a statue of Juliet. They do have a tomb of Juliet. So you can actually visit. I mean, the statue of Juliet, her one boob is gone because everybody takes pictures holding it for whatever reason. But it's small things like that. People really create something out of it. And it becomes fascinating. And people come and see the statue and they walk over to see the, to see the tomb of Juliet, and I honestly don't know whether they were real or not. I must really actually find out. But we don't tell those kind of stories about our own societies, our own communities that we live in, and they die out.
And we have such a rich history.
Yeah. Yeah, so
And
I
now
actually think we should sort of share information, and that's why I like what you are doing right now, because you are journaling lives, you are journaling things that happen in the sector that are not necessarily in the mainstream. So.
Never thought of it like that.
Yay! We're doing important things. Education. Touched. And especially now in the era of, social media, I think it's so much easier, for all this information to get out there as compared to, in the past. So, yeah, we must think about this more.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll ask one last question and then we will wrap this up. So, you strike me as someone who would have a pet peeve, and if that pet peeve gets under your skin, things can go wrong very quickly. If you could legalize that pet peeve of yours, if you do it, you get jailed, what would it be?
Disrespect for any human being.
Oh, good one.
Good one, yeah.
I was expecting something like traffic, slow drivers.
But where does that come from? Disrespect for the next person.
It all boils down to that.
For me, I always think, look, I believe in treat other people as you'd like to be treated. Let's just respect everybody, regardless of where they are in society. Just respect the next person. I think we would have a much nicer society if we could all do that.
Thank you so much, Langa. Thank you for, it was beautiful to have you on our platform.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you for joining us. And to you viewers out there, please remember to like, subscribe. What else, dolls?
Share.
Hit the notification bell.
Okay.
Is that what they say?
Yes, and to share.
Yeah, so see you next time.
And thank you.
Yeah. Thanks,
Bye.
ladies. Thank you very much.